think Session 0 is great, but this video is not about Session 0. The more campaigns I run and play in, the more I fall in love with this one small but powerful thing you can do even before Session 0. Every time I've done it, the campaign has been better for it, and when I skip it, I almost always regret it. And the best part is, it's also really fun. I'm talking about running a one-shot, but not just any one-shot. It has to be the right one in order to set up your campaign for smooth sailing, or dragony dungeoning, if you're not running a nautical campaign. I'm actually about to start a new campaign myself. I'm gonna run Wild Beyond the Witchlight for an all-girls group, which, yes, is the dream. You're right to be jealous. And because, like any DM, I want this campaign to go well, I already scheduled a one-shot for later this month. If you do this right, this can smooth out problems before they turn into campaign-killing issues months or even years down the line, when they're much harder to fix. And as I prep for my own game, I'm thinking a lot about what it means to do this right. I've landed on 3 things to focus on to make a one-shot actually work, not just as a fun session, but as a tool to improve your campaign. Starting with number 1, tone and style. Every campaign has a different tone and style, and the same goes for players and DMs. I have whole videos about all the different subgenres of fantasy that D&D can occupy, and all the different types of gameplay that players might love or hate. It's fun, it's like D&D astrology. I'm a storyteller sun, actor rising. But not everyone knows what kind of game they want, especially if you have players who are new to D&D. Everyone might think they're on board for a grim, dark survival game, but once they're actually counting rations and taking points of exhaustion when a long rest gets interrupted, some of your players might realize they'd prefer to play in a world where they don't have to be hypervigilant all the time. Like me, in our world. I'm fine, everything's fine. This doesn't mean a grimdark survival campaign can't be awesome, but the goal here isn't just to have a great game. It's to test whether this kind of game works for your group. That means it's essential that the tone of your one-shot be very well aligned with the intended tone of your game. I'm not gonna run a Keys from the Golden Vault heist for my one-shot and then turn around and start a Curse of Strahd gothic horror game, because that wouldn't tell me anything useful. Unless the heist is like, break into this haunted castle and steal the vampire's favorite cravat. So once you've found or written a one-shot that matches up with your campaign, how do you actually conduct that vibe check? For step 1, I would suggest taking a minute before you run the game and just jotting down a few words to describe the tone you're aiming for. Epic, heartfelt, horny. You probably don't have to write down that last one, it's kind of a given. Hang on to that list until after the one-shot, and then compare it with the tone that actually showed up at the table. If you wrote down serious and your party spent 40 minutes setting up a trap to magically pants the villain in front of his whole army of minions, then maybe the reality of the game isn't gonna be like you're expecting. Sounds like it'll be better, actually. Lucky you. And then for step 2, even if the tone does match what you had in mind, there's also the question of whether or not that's a good thing. If you said heroic and dramatic, and it was indeed heroic and dramatic, is everyone actually into heroic and dramatic? Wild Beyond the Witchlight, for example, is just chock full of whimsy. Some of my players might like the sound of this in theory, but if, in practice, they find themselves getting annoyed when they're pickpocketed by pixies, or rolling their eyes at me introducing a herringon barber named Benjamin Snips, we're gonna have bigger problems down the line. Another thing I want to try out for my campaign has to do with the fact that every single encounter in Wild Beyond the Witchlight has an option for a non-combat solution. You can definitely fight your way through the campaign, and many parties do, but it's not required. This means some parties can easily go multiple sessions with no combat at all. In my player group, there's one person who's told me she prefers combat to role-playing. She's still interested in trying it out, and we have some ideas for her character that might help ease this mismatch, but ultimately, only playing through a combat light or combat optional session will show us if that's a gap we can bridge, or if this just isn't the right campaign for her. Which would be totally fine. Different dungeons for different dragons. But it's better to figure out if it's a good fit before we commit to an ongoing thing. This is gonna be one of those times when you really do just need to ask players for direct feedback, by the way. I really like the stars and wishes system for this. At the end of the one-shot, you'll ask every player for a star, which is something they enjoyed about the session, and a wish, which is something they'd want to see if they played again. This is a great way to get feedback even from players who are hesitant to be critical, because it's framed as, what do you want next time, instead of what did I do wrong. If after your whimsical and silly game, your players are wishing for drama and high stakes, that's a good sign that they aren't really vibing with your chosen tone. And that goes for you as a game master too. Maybe you find that your own expectations for the style aren't lining up with reality. There have been plenty of times when I thought something sounded like fun, but once I actually got a chance to try it, I realized it wasn't for me. Like dual wielding. Turns out I don't want to be subtle. Speaking of being unsubtle, I would like the budget to buy more bladed weapons. Let's cut to today's sponsor. Dress barbed devils in God, holy weapon. Ginny, it's me. I mean you, from the future. I need to tell you about today's sponsor, Spawns of the Mindrender by Elderbrain. What? I don't have a sponsorship from Elderbrain. It's Elderbrain. Quick, lotto numbers. There's no time. I need to tell you about Spawns of the Mind Render. It's a massive dark fantasy campaign for D&D, set in a world where magic is outlawed, war machines rule, and sanity is your most precious resource. Parties have to survive a harsh landscape of icy mountains, and buried underneath, remnants of the Far Realm. This sounds intense. Oh, it is. It's just the kind of complex, branching plot you want for high-level campaigns. This one is for levels 11 through 15, so it's built to challenge those powerful Tier 3 characters. Looks like it launched on BackerKit May 5th, yesterday. That's the problem. You have to sign up within the first 48 hours, and that's already half gone. Early bird physical backers get this incredible Mimic Siege Engine dice tower. I can't believe I missed it. Not to mention a pack of over 500 digital monster and NPC tokens on it. Hey, doesn't this create some kind of paradox? Like, if I don't forget, why would you come back in time in the first place? Done. Okay, good. Different timeline, you backed it. So why are you here? You still haven't started your taxes. Ginny, it's May. If the overall tone of the campaign is mainly the Game Master's business, this is the part that rests more on the player's shoulders, their own characters. But as a Game Master, you still have an important role to play here. There are several ways to handle characters in a pre-campaign one-shot. Maybe players are bringing a version of the character that they intend on using in the full campaign. Maybe they're bringing a one-off character that at least allows them to try out a class or species they're considering. If they're first-timers, they may even be using a pre-made character. All these things can be useful as long as there's some kind of intention there. The main thing you want to avoid is somebody just grabbing their nearest level 3 character sheet on their way out the door. This is a chance to get a feel for the character they might spend the next year playing. It's like, take the opportunity to go on at least one date before you get married, you know? If at all possible, I recommend talking with each player beforehand about the kind of character they're excited to bring to the table. Even experienced players may have certain builds they want to explore before committing. Personally, I've been playing D&D for 8 years now, and there are still plenty of species and subclasses I've never touched. I'd rather find out in a one-shot that the Battle Master fighter is mind-numbingly boring to me than change my character 4 months into the campaign. R.I.P. Kisha the Goliath. You deserve better than me. Meanwhile, newer players might come to you with ideas about how they want to interact with the world or how they'd like their character to fight, and then you can guide them towards options that you think will match up with their wants. If someone thinks they want to play a spellcaster, but then they actually play one and realize that doing magic is mostly reading instructions and debating different interpretations of the phrase open container, they still have a chance to pivot to a rogue or something. To help your players figure out how much they'll actually enjoy these characters, it's really important that you include a solid variety of encounters and situations in your one-shot. There should be some social moments, some combat, maybe a puzzle or some exploration, basically just a sampler of whatever you think is going to come up in your campaign. Just give your players a chance to see how this character would operate in each of these scenarios. If possible, go through your one-shot once you know your players' character choices and see if there's anywhere you can add an encounter or challenge that leaves a good opening for their strengths. Especially if they haven't played that class before, it'll be productive to make sure your druid gets to wild shape, your rogue gets to sneak, your barbarian gets to smash. Since my group for Wild Beyond the Witchlight is made up mostly of beginner players, it's especially important to me that we talk about casters versus martial classes and that we have open conversations about class complexity. I'm the last person to tell a new player they can't play a druid if they want to, but I have also run a campaign for someone who thought she wanted to play a druid, but actually wanted to play something 80% less complex and just have a pet squirrel. One-shots are also a great way to gauge whether the starting level of the party feels right. Are you starting at level 1 and noticing your players are drifting off during your lore dumps, pining for their future subclass? Or are you starting at level 8 and feeling like everyone's tripping over their character sheets whenever their turn comes around? Figuring this out early will help you tailor the starting level of the campaign to better suit everyone's comfort and skill level from the start. Which brings us to the last reason to run a one-shot before your campaign. The reason that is simultaneously the most important and the most difficult to quantify. I'm talking, of course, about chemistry. Tone mostly comes from the DM. Characters mostly come from the players. But this last piece, everybody at the table has shared custody of. Even if everything else is going well, there's still one huge question left. Do these people actually enjoy playing together? A lot of this comes down to gut feeling. You can usually tell when a group is clicking. People are engaged, not just with the game and the DM, but with each other. You might even have to remind people to keep focus or interrupt conversation to move the plot along. And then there are groups where everyone is perfectly nice and nothing goes wrong, but somehow the energy energy just feels like a mandatory work icebreaker. That doesn't automatically mean the campaign is doomed. Chemistry isn't one size fits all, and you get to decide how much of it is necessary as a precursor to the campaign. Even though I personally have identified every best friend of my life within the first 10 minutes of meeting them, I'm aware of the fact that some people need time to get comfortable with each other. So I wouldn't treat this as a yes-no answer. Instead, I think you should think of it as information gathering. Are some players particularly quiet or taking up a lot of space? Is anyone getting talked over or sidelined? Are players building on each other's ideas and interacting with one another, or does it feel like they're missing each other creatively, or each playing an individual game with you? None of these things mean you can't play together, but they are things that'll matter over the course of a long campaign. Even though this is largely a vibe check, there are two practical things I pay attention to when I'm trying to measure this. The first is, how much space are the players filling without me? There's a difference between comfortable pause and everyone silently staring at the DM like baby birds waiting for narrative worms, and I promise you'll be able to feel that difference. Do you feel like you, as the DM, are the one asking every question, prompting every interaction, pushing every scene forward? If, even by the end of the first session, players aren't really interacting much with each other, that is usually a bad sign on the chemistry front. I'm a YouTuber, so obviously I like to hear myself talk, but trust me, if I wanted to monologue for 3 hours a week, I'd start a podcast. Personally, I'm hesitant to sign up for a whole campaign if I already know I'm going to be carrying the entire thing on my shoulders. My favorite games are the ones where I can barely get a word in edgewise because my players are so invested and gelling so well as a team. My dream game is one where I can sit back with popcorn and watch a whole story play out in front of me in real time, especially when I didn't do any session prep. The second thing I pay attention to happens after the game ends. Do people immediately pack up and leave, or do they keep chatting? I don't care if they're talking about the game, or recommending their favorite taco place, or discussing the real-world pros and cons of having horns. Cons, turtlenecks are suddenly hard. Pros? Sexy, for one thing. If everyone finishes the one-shot and immediately disperses like they're afraid the last person standing is gonna get stuck with a bill, I consider that a bit of a red flag. Even if they met for the first time that day, they just spent several hours playing pretend together. They're already several levels of intimacy deeper than your average new acquaintances. If they have nothing to talk about, that could be a bad sign for the future. One more important note here, the chemistry doesn't just have to work between the players, it also has to work with you. Did you actually enjoy running for this group? Did you feel inspired by the ideas they brought to the table? Are you leaving the session energized and excited to play more? I am not saying everyone needs to be besties before session 1, but I am saying that this is your chance to get a taste of what this group's dynamic is before, to put it bluntly, it becomes much more awkward to uninvite somebody. Pretty much any one-shot can be a good test of chemistry, provided you step over this one extremely low bar. For the love of all things polyhedral, please include more than just combat. Even if your campaign is combat heavy. Combat is great, I love combat, but it silos players. Everyone is focusing on their own character and their own turn. But you need players to interact with each other in order to learn anything from this. You need social moments, problem solving, situations where players have to make decisions together. And just as importantly, you need to leave space for them to fill. I used to be so afraid of silence at the table that I would jump in immediately anytime things got quiet. I was just terrified of my players being bored. But what I was actually doing was interrupting roleplay before it had a chance to happen. Sometimes your players need a second to look at each other and realize, oh, we can jump in here. I actually think this is going to be one of the biggest things I'm watching for in my Wild Beyond the Witchlight group, because almost everyone in this campaign is new to each other. Do I hope we all become inseparable best friends and start a fantasy version of the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants? Of course I do, I'm not a fool, but at minimum I want to make sure we're going to get along and have fun together while we're playing. I fully admit that this is, to some degree, a qualitative judgment. Ultimately, it's up to you how much chemistry you think is necessary for a good campaign. If your one-shot experience doesn't meet any of the criteria I've talked about here and you still want to move forward, there is nothing stopping you. But personally, I think people underestimate how big an impact this has on the campaign overall. If your group has great chemistry, you can survive a boring plot arc, or a stint with a bad house rule that you end up hating, or a long shopping session. But even if your lore is watertight and your NPCs are three-dimensional and your encounters are perfectly balanced, bad chemistry can make that game miserable anyway. So for me, I consider it the foundation of a campaign. If it doesn't turn into a Sisterhood of the Traveling Pauldron situation, you can keep it. Some of you might be asking, Ginny, what is the difference between running a one-shot and just starting your campaign and staying flexible? Can't you learn all this stuff during session 1 and then make changes if you need to? And first of all, great participation, but next time let's wait to be called on, okay? The nice thing about a one-shot is that it's inherently self-contained. Once it's over, you can change anything, from the setting to the characters to the group itself, without having to retcon things. You don't even have to run the campaign at all if the one-shot tells you it's not a good idea. idea. And I think we all understand that there is a material difference between not starting a campaign and canceling a campaign. That difference isn't just a technicality. It gives you something that people don't always realize they need before starting a campaign: permission to change your mind. People get excited about campaigns. I'm one of those people. The minute it's locked in, the train has left the station for me. I'm making playlists, I'm building Pinterest boards, I have mentally signed the blood pact. But if you leave your one-shot feeling like you've found problems and you've got some work to do, that's a good thing. That was literally why you ran it, so you could find those problems before they were set in stone. And now you have a chance to adjust your plans, figure out which of those problems you're willing to work around, and prepare to work around them. Half the players I'm bringing in for this Wild Beyond the Witchlight campaign have never played D&D before. There is a very real possibility that someone sits down for this one-shot, plays for 4 hours, and realizes, oh, I actually don't like this. And if anyone does feel that way, I don't want them to worry that they're ruining some grand plan by changing their mind. That's why I actually don't like to frame these one-shots to players as being a direct precursor to a campaign. I don't want people to feel like they're doing a D&D audition, and I definitely don't want them to feel rejected if we realize the fit isn't quite right. Instead, I try to keep the campaign as a vague future hypothetical and just say, hey, let's play a one-shot, no commitment, see how it feels, and then we'll go from there. And this doesn't just help the DM keep things loose, it also helps the players. One of my players isn't sure she'll be able to commit to the schedule, so this gives her a chance to see if she's vibing with the group enough to decide it's worth driving into Denver every week or two. The reality is, sometimes testing for problems means you find problems, and if that happens, you have to be willing to do something with that information, or what's the point of doing a test run at all? If the tone isn't working, maybe you pivot. If the characters don't fit, maybe people make changes. If the chemistry isn't there, maybe you rethink the group. That last part especially can be uncomfortable, but I can tell you from personal experience that it's much less uncomfortable than when a group dissolves because the players don't like each other. So let's assume you're sold on this idea. I can't think of any reason you'd still be here at this point if you weren't, unless you're folding laundry, in which case, good job, I'm proud of you. The next question is, where do you actually find a one-shot that fits all these different criteria? I really like DM's Guild if you're hunting for a one-shot with a very specific theme or premise. They have all kinds of filters to make it easier to find stuff. I can literally search for adventures with the theme Feywild for tier 1 players and then sort by rating. Plus, you can read reviews to see how other DMs liked it or even how they changed it for their own table. There are also tons of books that are just collections of one-shots. There are official ones from Wizards of the Coast like Candlekeep Mysteries and Keys from the Golden Vault, and all kinds of great third-party options like One-Shot Wonders or this adorable collection called Adventures with Friends, which is actually where I found the Fae-themed combat optional one-shot I'll be running for my players in a couple weeks. Now, this next recommendation may sound biased, but that's just because it is. I sell a one-shot called Bard Behind Bars that would actually make a great trial one-shot. It's super approachable for newer DMs, and it includes a pretty broad spread of encounters: social interaction, combat, a logic puzzle, and some creative problem solving. You can get it in print or as a PDF at ginnyd.com/shop. And if you can't find the perfect one-shot, you can always write the perfect one-shot. I actually have a whole video about how to write a one-shot with my friend Jesse, who DMs one of my home games. He is also my self-proclaimed biggest fan. He's 6'8". I have truly never met a fan bigger.